1 Corinthians 9:27 is a verse that I believe cannot be refuted by once saved, always savers. Paul literally says that even he could become a reprobate, a castaway, rejected by God. This is talking about an unsaved person. So Paul is saying that even he, even though he was saved, he could become unsaved. He could end up in hell. That's what he's saying. It reads, "But I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified." Now, this word disqualified here, in the Greek, it's adokimos, and it means reprobate, castaway, rejected. This is how it's used in the King James. These are all words used to describe unsaved people. These are never used to describe saved people. In fact, this word is used a total of 8 times in the New Testament, and every single time it's used, it's talking about an unsaved person. Look at this. Romans 1:28, "And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done." This is talking about an unsaved person. Paul was saying that even he could be given over to a reprobate mind and become a reprobate, a castaway. In 2 Corinthians 13:5-7, he talks about that, "Do you not realize Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you fail to meet the test, or unless indeed you turn out to be reprobate, castaway, rejected by God." Well, why? Because they don't have Jesus Christ in them. If they don't meet the test, they're not saved because they don't have Jesus in them. This is that same word that Paul is using to say that even he could become this adokimos. We see in 2 Timothy 3:8, it says, "Just as Jannes and Jambres opposed Moses, so these men also opposed the truth, men corrupted in mind and disqualified regarding the faith." This is not talking about a saved individual. This is talking about unsaved people. Titus 1:16, "They profess to know God, but they deny him by their works. They are detestable, disobedient, unfit for any good work." This is unsaved people. And lastly, we have Hebrews 6:8, "But if it bears thorns and thistles, it is worthless and near to being cursed, and its end is to be burned." We know that children of God are not these things. They're not worthless. They're not cursed. They're not going to be burned in hellfire. This is plainly talking about unsaved people. Unsaved people are going to be burned. They are cursed. They're considered worthless in the end. But so anybody who's trying to say that you can't go to hell as a child of God, you could never become a reprobate, rejected by God, and end up in hell, they're deceiving you. They're deceiving you. Paul himself believed that even he, after preaching to so many others, even he could become rejected by God. Even he could go to hell. So anybody who's trying to say anything else is deceiving you. Now, this verse is actually a 2-for-1. It can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Not only does it destroy eternal security, but it also stands against the dangerous doctrine of faith alone. Before we get into it, let's just back up a few verses and get the context before we get to 1 Corinthians 9:27. Let's back up to verse 21, where Paul says that he does not consider himself antinomian. He doesn't consider himself to be under no law at all. In fact, he considers himself to be under the law of Christ. And then he goes on and compares our salvation to a race that, yes, we must actually run. We must actually do something. Yeah, I know that sounds heretical, but that's exactly what he says. We must do something, run like we're trying to win a prize, the prize of salvation, in order that we not become disqualified, reprobate, or end up in hell. Okay, let's start at verse 21. He says, "To those outside the law, I became as one outside the law, not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ, that I might win those outside the law. To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some." I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share with them in its blessings. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, but I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. So whose responsibility is it here to discipline your body and keep it under control? Who's doing the discipline of your body? Well, you are. It's your responsibility. Paul says that it's his responsibility. He does these things. He runs like he's trying to win the race. He disciplines his body just like an athlete would. Yes, he does these things. And he keeps it under control. Why? So that he doesn't become a reprobate, so that he doesn't go to hell. Then he goes on in chapter 10. Now, in the early manuscripts, there were no chapter breaks. So this is just all one flowing thought, because he says 4. He starts off chapter 10 with 4. So he's continuing with this thought. So in light of the fact that he just said that he could become a castaway, yes, he could go to hell. He says, 4, I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. Yes, just like they were baptized in the Red Sea in order to escape the Egyptians coming after them. We are also required to be baptized. And all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink. For they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. Nevertheless, with most of them God was not pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now these things took place as examples for us, that we may not desire evil as they did. Do not be idolaters, as some of them were. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. We must not indulge in sexual immorality, as some of them did, and 23,000 fell in a single day. We must not put Christ to the test, as some of them did, and were destroyed by serpents, nor grumble, as some of them did, and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now these things happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction, on whom the end of the ages has come. Therefore, okay, anytime there's a therefore, we have to ask, what's the therefore? Therefore. This is still a continuation of that thought. Therefore, let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, he will also provide the way of escape, that you may be able to endure it. Then he goes on to say, therefore, again, this is still a continuation of this. Therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry. Let me ask you this. Whose responsibility is it to flee from idolatry? Well, it's yours. It's your responsibility to flee from idolatry. That's what he's saying. All these things that they were destroyed for, he says, you flee these things. God will provide a way out. God is faithful. It says that he will provide you a way out, but he's not going to force you to take that. He's not just going to magically zap you by faith alone and you're just automatically going to do it. No, Paul says that he disciplines his body. He beats it and keeps it under control, lest he himself be disqualified and go to hell. This doesn't just happen. You aren't just zapped and you just all of a sudden make these choices. No, he's exhorting them, you flee from idolatry. You don't be like the Israelites and succumb to sexual immorality and all these other things, grumbling and putting Christ to the test. You have to do this. God is going to be faithful. He's going to do his part. But we have to choose this day whom we're going to serve. We are the ones that have to flee from idolatry. He's not going to just do it for us. He's not going to force us to do it. He's not going to make us do it. And Paul's not just saying here that, hey, hey, just have faith alone and all these things are just going to work its way out and all these things are going to happen. And then if you just have faith alone, you're just automatically going to flee from idolatry. You're just automatically going to not be an idolater and not be fornicating with people and not be doing all these wicked things. Yeah, just have faith alone and then all this will just work its way out. No, he says, listen, God is faithful. He will do his part. He gives you a way out. It's your choice to take it. And yes, you actually have to take it. You actually have to, yes, do something. Like Paul said, run this race. You have to beat your body and discipline your body and keep it under control. You have to flee idolatry. Don't let anyone deceive you on this. There are many, many deceivers out there. So don't let any of those preaching faith alone or eternal security deceive you on this. God bless.